The recent screening of the Kind Hearts and Coronets movie on Channel 82 reminded me of myself over 70 years ago sitting in a Stockton-on-Tees cinema and being intrigued by JOAN GREENWOOD's performance in this movie. I was fascinated by this diminutive actress's style and utterly distinctive, unusual voice. At 10 years of age, I was a cross between a highly practical, budding DIY expert, an actor-singer, professional at 12, and a romantic daydreamer, but I can't recall that the latter state would have suggested that I would one day find myself holding this screen goddess in my arms, and that we'd be waltzing together. This, despite even at that early age, for me it was just a given that I was going to be a professional actor. Due partly to my mother's health and my parents making sure that I had a settled education, they'd given up their theatrical careers and settling down in Stockton had opened up theatrical studios where they taught dancing, singing and acting. So I had already appeared as a singer and actor in their student revues and pantomimes, and from the first setting foot on stage at 7 years of age, as far as I was concerned, there was never any small boy's dreams of being a cowboy, fighter pilot or a locomotive driver. My parents were very careful never to push me in the direction of a theatrical career, and indeed frequently pointed out how insecure it was, and that success in that medium mostly depended on not what you can do, but who you know, and sheer luck. However, they didn't deter me, as I simply knew that my future was going to be in the theatre. So it was that around 40 years later, I was booked to play a butler in one of the episodes of the first TV series of Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders' Girls on Top, which also starred Ruby Wax, who we'll talk about later, Tracy Ullman and Joan Greenwood. The gag in this episode was that Miss Ullman's character was a total romancer, and having claimed that she'd invited Prince Andrew around for tea, then couldn't get out of this fantasy, resulting in the other girls taking her up on it and setting to work to make appropriate arrangements, including the booking the services of a butler. The running gag then for this character was that he turned out to be the equivalent of what used to be referred to as a drugstore Indian. The latter expression derived from the early 20th century, when similarly to American barbers advertising their premises by displaying a striped pole, many drugstores had a life-size wooden statue of a Native American standing on the pavement. As he was shown in full war paint with an obviously fixed, very severe facial expression, it was quite common for many decades to often refer to anyone who tended to be dour or expressionless as a drugstore Indian. For my character, it meant that, although the royal personage obviously did not turn up, word had got out, so that the flat was invaded by a mob of friends and reporters, and in the ensuing mayhem this po-faced butler was the sort of eye of the storm, in that he appeared completely unconcerned, even oblivious to what was going on around him, while at the same time Miss Greenwood, as the girl's rather eccentric landlady, who was obviously upper class but had fallen on rather hard times, was attracted to this man, who she eventually decided was a Russian émigré with whom she'd had a dalliance many years previously, and although he continued to stare into space, she proceeded to vamp him. This finally resulted in them waltzing together, with him still appearing as though she didn't exist. So, arriving on the set for the shoot at least, I was instructed by the director to come and meet Joan, and led over to where this diminutive elderly lady was sitting in a chair. On being told, "Joan, may I introduce Llewellyn, who is to play our butler?" she looked up, and with her face expressing deep concern, extended her hand and said, "Oh, how do you do? I have to tell you that I'm very nervous, as I'm told that we are to waltz together, and I'm a terrible dancer." Well, if ever in my life I found the absolutely ideal reply, it was at that moment, when I heard myself say, "Miss Greenwood, nobody on earth could ever convince me that you wouldn't be as light on your feet as thistledown." At this, her face burst into the most radiant smile, and squeezing my hand, she said, "Oh, how kind! I think that we'll get on very well." And of course, I was the one who was as nervous as a cat when eventually taking this tiny, frail lady in my arms, horrified that I might step on her toes. Happily, as it happened, we danced together in a tight circle, absolutely perfectly, as though we'd long rehearsed it, and got the shot in one take. It was very warming to see that quite obviously everyone in the unit was fond of her, and they took great care of her. My disappointment was that I didn't manage to see the show until some years later, after she had passed away, and, as is often the case when the material is edited down for time in final transmission, the whole of Miss Greenwood's vamping had landed up on the cutting room floor. Also, as our waltzing together was meant to show that, as far as she was concerned, the old lady's flirting had finally succeeded, although that survived, it was shown as part of the final credits, and with my being much taller, my po-face happened to be in view, while Miss Greenwood's head and adoring expression was mostly hidden by a logo screen credit. Accorded to that, which quite pleased me, was that the booking agent, if it was telling the truth, said that I was offered a booking for an episode in the second series, but a long time in advance of shooting. I was told that this was because the girls wanted to write the episode a certain way, but would only do so if they were certain to have me rebooked as the butler. If I wasn't available, they'd write it in a different way. This one turned out to also include Miss Greenwood, but this time I was feeding Ruby Wax, an actress to whom I'd taken a shine on the previous job, as I watched her quietly and concentratedly rehearse, with no hint of her on-screen ebullient character. And I may note about that episode if, at 86 years of age, I managed to find time from a life in which there never appear to be enough hours in the day.
Okay, Justin, I want the slimline caviar and the dietetic champagne. A member of the royal family is coming here tonight. Everybody, lose weight. How many teeth can a man have in his mouth without eating his own face?
She swept into the ballroom, a radiant rhapsody in pink. The trembling onlookers shrank before her and bowed to the ground. A serene finger she held aloft and whispered loudly, "My prince, I have come, your servant."
Oh, my God. This is very sad, Jennifer. Tell her.
Well, it's not due for hours and hours and hours yet. You've got it a bit wrong, Lady Carlton.
Oh.
My caviar has hatched.
She'll be here. I know she's going to make an entrance.
Do you know her? Okay, I'm an actress, trained with Bud Stanislavski. That's B-U-D.
Josephine and I are considering moving into Clarence House. Garçon, how would you like to be in novels?
There better be a prince with her or she's in a lot of trouble. Right, Amanda? Amanda, right? You're alone? Told you, go for the juggler.
No sodding prick!